As the great Buddha once said, peace comes from within, do not seek it without. And yet, most of us are out there every day, chasing love, chasing success, chasing happiness like it's some prize hiding just beyond the next hill. We push, we strive, we exhaust ourselves trying to catch life, not realizing that the more we run, the more it slips through our fingers. But here's the truth. The Buddha understood deeply. The moment you stop chasing is the moment life begins to find you. This isn't weakness, it's wisdom. You don't have to force what's already on its way. You don't have to beg for what's already written for you. The universe responds not to desperation, but to trust. And when your heart is still, your hands open, and your soul surrendered, everything meant for you begins to arrive, gently, quietly, perfectly timed. So if you're tired of running, if your spirit is worn thin from the chase, this is your invitation. Let go of the chase, let go of the noise, and let's rediscover the beauty of allowing. 1. Let go of the illusion of control. Sometimes your mind convinces you that if you just work harder, think more, and try to control every little detail, then life will finally fall into place. It whispers, if I just push a little more, I can make everything go exactly the way I want. But life doesn't work like that. Life is not a machine that follows your commands. It's more like a flowing river, ever-changing, unpredictable, and alive. And the more you try to control it, to force its direction, the more frustrated and exhausted you become. Buddhism teaches that much of our suffering comes not from what happens to us, but from how tightly we cling to how we think life should be. This clinging is like trying to hold water in your hand. You scoop it up and try to keep it, but the tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. Control gives the illusion of safety, but in reality, it only creates tension, anxiety, and disappointment. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean being careless or lazy. And it certainly doesn't mean that you stop caring about your life. Letting go means you stop believing that you are the master of the universe. It means you understand that no matter how carefully you plan, some things will always be out of your hands, and that's okay. When you release this constant need to control, something peaceful happens inside you. Your shoulders relax, your breath deepens, the weight you've been carrying slowly begins to lift. You stop obsessing over every outcome and begin to live in the present moment. You trust that things will unfold as they are meant to, not always the way you wanted, but often in a way that brings unexpected blessings. Letting go invites peace back into your life. It gives your heart space to breathe. Your energy, once drained by overthinking, returns. Your joy, once buried under pressure, begins to shine again. You are no longer stuck in the endless cycle of what if and what now. Instead, you begin to flow with life. You begin to trust the timing, and often what arrives when you let go is far better, deeper, and more beautiful than anything you could have forced into being. So let go. Not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to know that you don't need to control everything to live a full and peaceful life. 2. Be still enough to receive what you've been running toward. We live in a world that glorifies speed, ambition, and constant movement. From the moment you wake up, you're taught to chase success, chase love, chase peace, chase purpose. And while there's nothing wrong with having dreams or goals, the constant need to run after them can leave you drained, empty, and disconnected from yourself. Many of us are running so fast that we don't even know what we're chasing anymore. We just know we don't want to fall behind. But here's a gentle truth. Some of the most important things in life, peace, clarity, love, healing, don't come through chasing. They come through stillness. They arrive when we stop moving long enough to let them in. Think of the mind like a glass of water. If you keep stirring it constantly, the water remains cloudy. But if you just let it sit for a moment, the dust settles and the water becomes clear. The same is true for your heart and your life. When you slow down and create space, when you stop chasing and simply be, clarity rises. What's meant for you begins to make its way in. In Buddhist teachings, stillness is not laziness, it is deep awareness. The Buddha didn't reach enlightenment through endless striving. He sat, he breathed, he observed. He allowed stillness to guide him into truth. In that sacred silence under the Bodhi tree, wisdom found him, not because he went after it forcefully, but because he became ready to receive it. Sometimes life is already offering you everything you've been asking for, but you're moving too fast to notice. You're so focused on the horizon that you miss the blessings blooming quietly beneath your feet. You miss the love in a kind word, the healing in a deep breath, the beauty in the ordinary moment. So pause, slow down, let your spirit exhale, be still, not as an escape from life, but as an invitation for life to finally reach you. When you stop running, you begin to hear your soul's quiet wisdom. You begin to reconnect with the parts of yourself you've forgotten in all the noise. And in that stillness, something shifts. You begin to realize that what you were chasing was never far away. It was always nearby, waiting for you to stop long enough to notice. Stillness is not empty. It is full of presence, full of life, full of possibility. And when you become still, you don't lose time. You make room for miracles. 3. Replace seeking with trust. From a very young age, we're taught to seek, to go out and get happiness, to chase love, to run after success, to constantly look for something outside of ourselves that will finally make us feel whole, safe, and enough. And so we begin the endless search, new goals, new relationships, new achievements. But no matter how much we collect, the emptiness remains. The seeking never stops. Because the truth is, when your heart is rooted in fear or lack, even the most beautiful moments will feel incomplete. Buddhism teaches us that endless seeking is like chasing the horizon. The more you move toward it, the more it moves away. You will never catch it because you're trying to grasp something that can't be held. Peace cannot be hunted down. Fulfillment cannot be earned by restlessness. Joy does not bloom in the soil of desperation. These deeper experiences of life can only arise when you stop seeking and start trusting. But what does trust really mean? It means you begin to believe, not just with your mind, but with your soul, that what is meant for you will never miss you, and what misses you was never meant to stay. It means you understand that you don't need to run after everything. Some things come not because you chased them, but because you became ready. When the fruit is ripe, it falls effortlessly. When the flower blooms, the bees find it. You don't have to scream for the universe to notice you. You just have to become the version of yourself that is ready to receive. Seeking comes from fear. Fear that you're running out of time. Fear that you're falling behind. Fear that if you don't make it happen, it never will. But trust comes from presence. Trust is soft, but strong. It whispers, I don't need to know how or when. I just know it will arrive. It allows you to rest your soul, to breathe again, to enjoy the life you already have instead of constantly chasing one you've imagined. There's a beautiful teaching in Buddhism about the nature of the mind. It says that the mind, when always grasping and seeking, is like a monkey jumping from branch to branch, never still, never content. But when you begin to trust the flow of life, the mind becomes like a calm lake, reflecting everything clearly, open to all possibilities. In that stillness, you begin to receive not only what you wanted, but also what you truly needed. When you replace seeking with trust, you stop trying to control every detail. You stop living in panic. You begin to align with life instead of forcing it. You begin to notice that what you once begged for is now quietly arriving without struggle. And often when it comes, you realize the waiting wasn't wasted. It was preparing you, maturing you, helping you grow into the person who could hold what was coming. So take a breath. You don't need to chase love. Become love. You don't need to search for peace. Return to the silence within you. You don't need to seek purpose. Live with presence, and purpose will unfold. Trust doesn't mean you stop moving. It means you stop rushing. It means you walk through life with open hands, not clenched fists, with a soft heart, not a desperate one. And in that quiet trust, something amazing happens. The universe begins to respond, not to your desperation, but to your stillness, not to your noise, but to your calm. You no longer have to chase what is meant for you. 4. Allow the universe to surprise you. One of the quietest forms of suffering is living a life that is overly planned, overly controlled, and overly expected. When we hold on too tightly to what should happen, we unknowingly close the door to what could happen. We leave no space for wonder, no room for the unexpected magic of life to unfold, and without realizing it, we live inside a box built by our own expectations, too small for the greatness that life wants to give us. Buddhism teaches us that the root of suffering is not just attachment to things, but also attachment to how we think things must go. We create mental blueprints, the perfect career, the ideal relationship, the specific timeline, the exact outcome. And then, when life doesn't follow our plan, we feel lost, disappointed, or even betrayed. But what if the plan wasn't wrong, just too limited? What if life, in its vast intelligence, was guiding you towards something better than what you imagined? When you let go of rigid expectations, you make space for the universe to work in ways you couldn't predict. You allow it to show you a path you didn't even know existed. It's like walking through a dense forest, insisting on only one trail, unaware that just around the bend lies a breathtaking view you never expected. But you'll never see it if you refuse to stray from the map you created. There's a deep wisdom in surrendering to the unknown. It doesn't mean you give up on your dreams. It means you loosen your grip on how they must come true. You stop demanding life to show up on your terms, and you begin to approach each day with openness and curiosity. You ask, what beauty might reveal itself today if I stop trying to control everything? That question alone can shift your entire energy. Think of a time in your life when something beautiful happened unexpectedly. Maybe a conversation that changed your perspective, a chance meeting that became a lifelong friendship, a delay or detour that led to something better than what you were chasing. Those are not accidents. Those are divine surprises, whispers from the universe reminding you that you're not alone and that you don't have to figure it all out. The Buddha taught that life is always changing, always moving, always becoming, and when we resist that natural flow, we suffer. But when we move with life, when we say yes to the unknown, we become students of wonder. We begin to live in harmony with the mysterious rhythm of the universe. We learn to trust not just what we can see, but also what we cannot yet imagine. It's easy to think that only your plans can bring you happiness. But plans are limited by what you currently know. The universe sees beyond that. It sees your strength before you've discovered it. It sees your capacity for love, joy, healing, and transformation far beyond what your current mindset allows. So sometimes it doesn't give you what you ask for, not to punish you, but to protect you, to redirect you, to prepare you for something greater. When you allow the universe to surprise you, you begin to live differently. You wake up not with anxiety about what needs to happen, but with a quiet excitement about what might happen. You approach each moment like a gift, not a task. You soften your heart, you loosen your expectations, and in that space, life begins to move toward you in the most unexpected and beautiful ways. So take a step back. Let go of the rigid picture in your mind. Trust that what is meant for you will not need to be forced, and be open, truly open to being surprised. Because often, the most incredible things in life don't come when you chase them. They come when you welcome them. Let the universe surprise you. It has more love, more wonder, more magic to offer than your plans ever could. All it needs is a little space, and your willingness to say, "I'm ready for what I never expected, but always needed." 4. Allow the universe to surprise you. We spend so much of our lives clinging to certainty. We build plans, we create detailed maps, we form expectations and call them reality. And then, when life doesn't follow our carefully drawn script, we feel lost, we panic, we try to fix things, force things, chase things. But here is a quiet truth most of us forget in our busyness. Not everything valuable in life comes according to plan. In fact, some of the most meaningful, transformative and beautiful moments arrive when we least expect them, through doors we didn't even know were there. Buddhism teaches that attachment is one of the primary causes of suffering. Not just attachment to people or objects, but to ideas, to outcomes, to the way we think things should be. When we become too fixated on one particular outcome, we begin to believe that happiness can only exist in that version of reality, and so we become blind to everything else. We stop noticing the tiny miracles happening around us because we're too focused on chasing the one we pictured in our heads. But life, in its wisdom, is not bound to your expectations. It is not limited by your imagination. And often it has something far greater in store for you, something you could never have planned. But to receive that, you must be willing to loosen your grip. You must be willing to say, maybe I don't know what's best right now. Maybe I can make space for something better than I expected. Think of it this way. Imagine you're walking down a familiar path, one you've taken many times. You know every twist and turn, and you believe that's the only way to reach where you want to go. But then suddenly, a new trail appears. You hesitate. It's unfamiliar, unmarked. Your mind resists. But deep down, something tells you to follow it. And when you do, you find yourself standing at a breathtaking view you didn't even know existed, a place more beautiful than anything you could have planned. This is what happens when you let life surprise you. Some of the best things in your life may arrive unannounced. The love that enters quietly through a random conversation. The opportunity that finds you when you stop forcing it. The healing that begins on a day you thought was just like any other. These are the universe's gifts, unwrapped, unexpected, often unnoticed until you slow down enough to see them. The Buddha taught us to let go of attachment, not because life is cruel, but because it's so full of movement, so full of change, that trying to hold on to one fixed version of reality is like trying to trap the wind. The more we cling, the more we suffer. The more we allow, the more we receive. Life flows naturally when you stop trying to control every twist of the river. But allowing doesn't mean you stop dreaming or give up on your goals. It means you release the idea that they must happen exactly how and when you want them to. It means you open your hands, you release the clenched fist of expectation, and instead offer life a gentle palm of trust. You stop saying, "This is how it has to be," and start saying, "I'm open to what this moment holds." When you allow the universe to surprise you, you begin to notice beauty in places you never thought to look. You stop rushing. You stop demanding. You begin to witness how life works in mysterious, intelligent, and often humorous ways. A door closes, and you cry. Only later do you realize it had to close to guide you to a better one. A relationship ends, and you feel broken. Only later do you see that it made room for a more aligned love. A delay frustrates you until it saves you from a greater hardship. This is the quiet brilliance of surrender. It doesn't always feel good in the moment. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it feels like things are falling apart. But more often than not, they are falling into place. Just not the place you imagined, but the one you needed. And when you look back, you'll realize that life didn't ignore you. It redirected you. It wasn't punishing you, it was preparing you. preparing you to grow in strength, in wisdom, in patience, and in grace, preparing you to be someone who could handle the bigger blessings that were never meant to be chased, but received. So today, soften your need to know what's coming. Make space in your heart for surprise. Leave a little room in your plans for magic. Life doesn't need your control, it needs your trust. Because some of the most beautiful chapters in your story will not begin the way you expected, but they will arrive at exactly the right time, with exactly what your soul has been needing. Let go of the tight grip on your expectations. Open your eyes to the wonder of the present. Say yes to the unexpected, and allow the universe to surprise you. Because when you stop demanding how life should look, you start to see how beautiful it actually is. 5. Practice non-attachment without losing compassion. One of the most misunderstood ideas in spiritual practice is the concept of non-attachment. Many people hear this word and assume it means detachment, coldness, or becoming indifferent to the world. But that is not what Buddhism teaches. True non-attachment is not about shutting off your heart. It's about opening it in a way that is wise, balanced, and deeply compassionate. It's about loving fully while understanding that everything you love is temporary. It's about showing up for life with tenderness, not ownership, with care, not control. We often mistake attachment for love. We believe that clinging tightly to someone means we care, that obsessing over outcomes means we're passionate, that worrying constantly means we're invested. But in truth, attachment is fear wearing the mask of love. It's the fear of losing what we hold dear. It's the fear of change. It's the fear that if we loosen our grip, something will disappear, and with it, our happiness. But here's the wisdom. Everything in life is impermanent. Every person, every experience, every breath you take is passing through. That doesn't mean they don't matter. It means their value lies in their presence, not their permanence. Non-attachment allows you to honor what you have without being destroyed when it changes or goes away. It allows you to love someone deeply, but without needing them to stay in order for you to be okay. You love them because love is your nature, not because they fill a hole inside of you. The Buddha once said, "From attachment springs grief, from attachment springs fear. For one who is wholly free from attachment, there is no grief, whence fear." These words hold a powerful truth. When you are attached, your happiness is conditional. It depends on things staying a certain way. But when you practice non-attachment, your peace is no longer held hostage by outcomes. You stop living in fear of loss and begin living in the fullness of now. This doesn't mean you stop feeling. Quite the opposite. You feel everything more clearly, more fully, more honestly, because you are no longer clouded by fear. You can be present with someone's joy without needing to control it. You can sit with someone's pain without rushing to fix it. You can give love freely without demanding it back. This is not coldness. This is strength. This is freedom. This is compassion without chains. Imagine holding a bird in your hand. If you grip it tightly, you harm it. If you let it rest gently in your palm, it may stay. And even if it flies away, your heart remains at peace, because you honored its nature. People, too, are not meant to be held tightly. They are meant to be loved with openness, with care, and with trust in life's natural rhythm. Non-attachment is the art of loving while letting go. It is understanding that the moment is a gift, not a guarantee. In your own life, think about the things or people you may be clinging to. Are you afraid of losing them? Are you relying on them to feel whole or safe or happy? Are you constantly anxious about what will happen if they change or go away? These are signs that what you feel may be attachment, not pure love. And the more tightly you hold, the more pain you will feel when things inevitably shift, as they always do. Practicing non-attachment begins with awareness, with noticing when your love turns into grasping, when your care becomes control, when your giving starts expecting something in return. And in those moments, you gently return to center. You breathe. You remind yourself that true love is never about possession. It's about presence. It's not about keeping things forever. It's about being grateful for them now. This kind of love is deeply freeing. It allows you to be fully engaged with life, with others, and with yourself, without being ruled by fear or neediness. It teaches you to enjoy a moment without trying to trap it, to hold someone's hand without needing to own their path, to experience life with full, open-hearted compassion, even as you let go of the need to control what stays and what goes. When you master non-attachment, you stop chasing, you stop fearing change, you begin to trust that what leaves is not a loss and what stays is not your possession. You realize that love, joy, peace, and even grief are waves passing through the ocean of your being. Not things to be captured, but experiences to be honored. So practice non-attachment, not to escape feeling, but to feel everything more truly. Love without gripping, give without expecting, stay open without being afraid. Let people and moments come and go, and let your heart remain steady in the middle of it all. This is not weakness, this is sacred strength. This is the quiet power of a soul that trusts in the impermanence of life and loves anyway. 6. The present moment is already full. We live in a world that constantly tells us we're missing something, that who we are right now isn't enough. That fulfillment lies in the future, in the next achievement, the next relationship, the next step on the ladder of success. So we begin to live in a state of quiet dissatisfaction, always reaching, always wanting, always chasing something just out of reach. We scroll, we compare, we rush from one goal to the next, all the while carrying a subtle ache that whispers, "This moment is not enough." But what if that whisper is a lie? What if the thing you've been seeking all along is not somewhere out there, but quietly waiting for you here? What if the present moment, just as it is already full? Buddhism gently invites us to wake up from the illusion that happiness lives in the next moment. The truth is, the only time that ever truly exists is now. The past is a memory. The future is a dream. The present, this exact breath, this sensation in your body, this feeling in your heart, is the only place where life is happening. And when you're not present for it, you're not truly living. You're simply existing in a mental fog, chasing a version of reality that doesn't exist. Think about it. How many joyful moments have you missed because your mind was somewhere else? How many quiet blessings passed you by because you were too focused on what's next? How many times have you been physically present but emotionally absent, sitting with someone you love, eating a meal, walking through nature, but lost in your thoughts, unaware of the beauty unfolding around you? This is the great tragedy of modern life. We are surrounded by abundance, yet we live with a mindset of scarcity. We are full of breath, full of life, full of potential in every single moment, but we feel empty because we're not here. We're always there, where we think we should be, but the moment you return to the now, something shifts. Your shoulders relax, your thoughts slow down. You begin to notice the soft breeze against your skin, the warmth of sunlight through the window, the quiet rhythm of your own breath. And you realize this moment is not lacking, it's not incomplete, it's not waiting for anything, it is complete, right now, as it is. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "The present moment is filled with joy and happiness. If you are attentive, you will see it." And it's true. There is peace in this very second, if you're willing to look. There is clarity, healing, and even joy, not because something new happens, but because you finally see what's been here all along. But being present isn't always easy. The mind is trained to wander. It leaps into the future, building worries and fantasies. It clings to the past, replaying regrets and old wounds. But presence is a practice. It's a return. It's a gentle reminder you give yourself again and again. Come back. You are here. Life is here. Try this. Next time you feel restless or dissatisfied, pause. Look around you. Feel your breath. Bring your attention to your senses, what you see, hear, feel, smell, and taste. Don't judge the moment. Don't compare it to what it could be. Just receive it fully. Honor it as sacred. And notice how much opens up when you simply arrive in your life. In the teachings of Buddhism, this practice is known as mindfulness, pure awareness without judgment. It's not about making every moment perfect. It's about seeing that every moment already contains everything you need to feel alive. Even in the quiet, even in the mundane, even in the stillness, life is whispering, "I am here." And that whisper is more than enough. We often think we need more answers, more success, more time. But the greatest freedom comes when you realize you don't need anything added to this moment to make it complete. You just need to be with it. You need to let it be enough. And here's the beauty. The more present you become, the more deeply you live. You begin to taste your food with gratitude. You listen to others with your whole heart. You watch the sky change color with awe. You laugh more. You cry more. You feel more alive, not because your life changed, but because you showed up for it. The present moment is not a stepping stone to something better. It is the destination. It is the gift. It is the only place where joy can truly be felt, where peace can be experienced, where love can be expressed. Not later, not someday, but now. So stop chasing a better moment. Stop rushing through the beauty of your own life. Slow down, breathe, and let this moment be enough. Because when you truly see it, when you allow yourself to be fully here, you'll realize the present isn't empty, it's overflowing, and you've always had everything you needed. 7. Who you become. While waiting is more important than what you're waiting for. We often live our lives in anticipation of the next moment. We wait for the promotion, for the relationship, for the healing, for clarity, for peace, for happiness. We tell ourselves that life will begin once something happens, once we arrive at a certain place, once a certain person enters or returns, once a particular dream is fulfilled. But as we sit in that space of waiting, something quiet and powerful is also unfolding. We are becoming. Buddhism teaches that the journey is not a path to something else. The journey is the destination. The moment we are living right now is not just a delay or a placeholder for something greater. It is the sacred ground where transformation occurs. And so, the question isn't, when will it happen? The deeper question is, who am I becoming while I wait? So many of us rush through our waiting seasons, treating them like long hallways we must pace through to reach the real life waiting at the door. But what if the waiting itself is the lesson? What if the discomfort, the silence, the slow days are not signs that nothing is happening, but quiet proof that something within you is awakening, softening, strengthening, reshaping? When you shift your focus from what you're waiting for to who you're becoming, everything changes. Waiting is no longer wasted time. It becomes sacred time. Time to grow in wisdom, in compassion, in patience, in presence. The soul doesn't grow in fast forward. It grows in stillness. And the longer we stay present in the stillness, the deeper the roots of our character grow beneath the surface. Let's reflect deeply for a moment. When you look back at your life, when did you grow the most? Was it during the times when everything was going smoothly? Or was it during the seasons where you had no choice but to slow down, to sit in the unknown, to wait through the pain or the confusion, not knowing what was ahead? It's often in those quiet, unseen spaces where our true strength is born. You see, what you're waiting for, be it love, peace, success, or healing, may eventually arrive, but how you receive it depends entirely on who you've become by the time it does. If you spend your waiting filled with bitterness, anxiety, resentment, and fear, you might get what you wanted but still feel empty. But if you spend your waiting becoming softer, wiser, calmer, and more grateful, then even if you don't get exactly what you wanted, your soul will be deeply fulfilled. Buddhism teaches the art of being deeply present with what is, rather than constantly resisting or trying to escape it. This teaching applies most powerfully during seasons of waiting. Instead of asking, "When will it happen?" ask, "What is life trying to teach me right now?" Maybe you're learning patience. Maybe you're being invited to rest. Maybe you're being guided to trust without having all the answers. There's a Zen parable about a farmer whose horse runs away. His neighbor says, "Oh, what bad luck." The farmer calmly replies, "Maybe." The next day, the horse returns with 3 wild horses. The neighbor exclaims, "What good luck." The farmer says, "Maybe." Later, the farmer's son breaks his leg while riding one of the wild horses. Again, the neighbor says, "What bad luck." And again, the farmer says, "Maybe." Soon after, soldiers come to draft young men into the army, but they pass over the farmer's son because of his broken leg. The point of this story is simple, yet profound. We do not always see the full picture. What we think is a delay may be a divine detour. What we call a setback may be a setup for something better. The key is not to rush to label every moment, but to stay present with it, allowing it to shape us quietly from the inside out. And as we wait, we learn things we could never learn in fast-moving seasons. We learn endurance, not just to tolerate the slow pace, but to embrace it. We learn to find peace even when nothing around us is changing. We learn to let go of control and to trust the rhythm of life, even when that rhythm feels out of sync with our plans. In the sacred silence of waiting, we also develop something rare in today's world: depth. When you're not distracted by constant noise, when you stop jumping from one instant gratification to the next, you begin to connect with the deeper layers of your being. You begin to understand your wounds, your desires, your fears, and your hopes. You begin to strip away what no longer serves you. You begin to build an inner stability that doesn't rely on external validation or outcomes. And this is the miracle. The person you become while waiting often ends up being far more valuable than whatever you were waiting for. Because even when the thing arrives, the opportunity, the relationship, the healing, you will meet it as a whole person. Not someone who is desperate or broken, but someone who is grounded, grateful, and ready. Someone who doesn't cling to the outcome because they have already learned how to live deeply in the now. So many people get what they wanted and still feel restless. Why? Because they didn't transform while they were waiting. They treated the wait as punishment instead of preparation. They focused so much on the arrival that they missed the becoming. Don't let that be your story. Your becoming is the treasure. Your presence is the power. The depth you gain now will echo through every future chapter of your life. Let's be honest, waiting can be hard. It can feel like you're being forgotten, like nothing is moving, like your prayers are unanswered. But let me gently remind you, not all growth is visible, not all movement can be measured, and not all answers arrive in words. Sometimes the most powerful things happen beneath the surface, quietly rearranging the landscape of your soul. It's like planting a seed. For weeks, even months, nothing appears above the soil, but beneath, in the dark, the seed is breaking, expanding, rooting, and one day it pushes through the earth, not because it suddenly became alive, but because it had been growing in silence all along. You are the same. Just because you don't see immediate change doesn't mean nothing is happening. The soul grows in unseen ways. So be patient with yourself. Be gentle with your journey. Celebrate the stillness. Embrace the pause. And remember that every breath you take in trust and peace is shaping you into someone capable of holding what's coming, not just with your hands, but with your heart. In Buddhism, this understanding is at the core of mindful living. To live with full attention in the present moment, even when things aren't going the way you hoped, is the path to awakening. To find meaning in the waiting is to find meaning in life itself. So let the waiting refine you. Let it teach you to surrender. Let it help you listen, feel, and grow. Don't rush to the next chapter. Live this one fully, because one day you'll look back and realize it wasn't just about the arrival. It was about who you became while you waited. 8. Let life flow without forcing it. There is a quiet, often unnoticed battle that many of us fight each day, a battle against the natural rhythm of life. We push, we pull, we manipulate and resist, trying to make life bend to our will. We want things faster. We want them clearer. We want answers now, results today, peace immediately. But the truth is, life does not respond to force. It responds to flow. And the more we try to control, the more disconnected we become from the beauty of what's already unfolding. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises when we resist what is, when we argue with the present moment, when we fight against change, when we cling to outcomes. We create internal conflict. And in trying to force life to go our way, we often miss the gentle current that was already guiding us exactly where we needed to be. Imagine for a moment a river. It doesn't struggle. It doesn't argue with the stones in its path. It doesn't wish it was somewhere else. It simply flows, around rocks, through valleys, over waterfalls, and in its flowing, it shapes the land, nourishes the earth, and finds its way to the sea without effort. That river doesn't force its journey, it surrenders to it, and in doing so, it becomes powerful. Now imagine your life as that river. Your goals, your relationships, your healing, your personal growth, everything you're trying to build or become is part of that current. When you try to force things, it's like trying to push the river with your hands. You end up exhausted, splashing in circles, creating waves of frustration that didn't need to exist. But when you allow life to flow, when you trust its timing, its wisdom, and its rhythm, you begin to move with it, and suddenly everything starts to feel more aligned, more peaceful, more alive. Letting life flow doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean being passive or lazy. It means learning the art of timing. It means knowing when to act and when to wait, when to speak and when to listen, when to hold on and when to let go. It's about tuning into the deeper intelligence of life and realizing that not everything needs your interference. Some things just need your faith. One of the biggest illusions we carry is the belief that we are the sole authors of every outcome, that if we just try harder, things will go our way. But life is a dance between effort and surrender. There are seasons when you must work with full dedication, yes. But there are also seasons when your job is to release the grip, to step back, to let the pieces come together without you forcing them into place. When you force things, you often act from fear, fear of failure, fear of missing out, fear of being left behind. But when you flow with life, you act from trust. Trust that what is meant for you will arrive, not because you chased it, but because you were aligned with it. Trust that your effort is meaningful, but not everything depends on you. Trust that the universe is not against you. It's simply unfolding in a way you may not yet understand. Think of the times in your life when you tried to force something to happen. Maybe you forced a relationship to work, even when it was hurting you. Maybe you forced a decision too quickly, only to regret it later. Maybe you forced yourself into a path that looked right on paper, but felt wrong in your soul. In hindsight, you may realize that the signs were always there. That the tension you felt was not a sign to push harder, but a sign to pause, breathe, and realign. Buddhism speaks of Wu Wei, a concept rooted in Taoism, but embraced in Zen as well, which means effortless action or action through non-action. It's not about doing nothing, but about doing what is needed with ease, grace, and presence. When you live in Wu Wei, You act in harmony with the flow of life. You stop fighting reality. You begin to trust the unfolding. So how do you let life flow without forcing it? You begin by observing. Pay attention to where your energy feels stuck, where you're constantly frustrated, where things feel heavy and unnatural. These are often areas where you are forcing. Then breathe, step back. Ask yourself, what would it feel like to stop pushing here? Not to quit, but to release the pressure, to let go of the demand that it has to happen now or my way. You also learn to listen. Life is always speaking to you, not with loud declarations, but with subtle cues. A delay might be a divine pause. A closed door might be a redirection, not a rejection. A quiet season might be preparing you, not punishing you. But you can only hear this wisdom if you stop shouting over it with your need to control everything. Letting life flow also means letting go of timelines. We are so obsessed with when things should happen, by what age we should be successful, how quickly we should heal, how soon we should have it all figured out. But life doesn't follow your schedule, it follows your soul's readiness, and sometimes the most important things take longer because they're growing deeper. Don't rush what needs time to mature. Trust the slow magic of the process. In the stillness of flowing with life, you'll find something unexpected: peace. The kind of peace that doesn't come from having everything figured out, but from no longer needing to. The peace of saying, I am here, I am doing my part, and I trust the rest. The peace of knowing that your worth is not defined by outcomes, that your life is not measured by speed, that your growth is not a race, it's a rhythm. This way of living takes courage. It's easier to push than to trust. It's easier to force than to surrender. But true spiritual strength lies in learning to soften, to listen, to trust the current of your life, even when you don't understand where it's going, especially then. When you let life flow, you stop needing to be in control all the time. You begin to move with grace. You start to notice beauty in the small things again. You find joy in the ordinary. You create space for synchronicity, those moments when life aligns effortlessly, when things click without effort, when what you need arrives right on time, simply because you were open to it. And most of all, you begin to trust yourself. Not the fearful self who tries to force everything, but the deeper self, the inner witness who knows that peace is not found in control. It's found in connection. Connection with the present moment, connection with your breath, connection with the quiet, intelligent rhythm of life. So today, breathe. Let go of the need to fix, to rush, to force. Come back to your center. Feel the river of life beneath your feet. It is already flowing. It doesn't need your pressure, it needs your presence. Let life flow. You are not here to control the current. You are here to learn how to move with it. And in doing so, you will go further, deeper, and more peacefully than you ever could by force. The art of being empty enough to be filled. There is a quiet paradox at the heart of the spiritual path, one that confuses the modern mind but frees the awakened heart. To truly receive, you must first become empty. Empty of noise, empty of ego, empty of expectations, attachments, and clutter. Empty not in the sense of being hollow or lacking, but empty in the sense of being open, receptive, clear, spacious. In the modern world, we are constantly taught to fill ourselves with achievements, possessions, entertainment, opinions, plans, thoughts, and more thoughts. The culture we live in equates fullness with success. The busier your mind, the more important you seem. The more packed your schedule, the more you appear to be valuable. The more noise you carry, the more alive you think you are. But Buddhism offers a gentle reversal of this idea. It says, let go, empty yourself. Become still enough to hear what life has been trying to tell you, because the truth is, you cannot be filled with peace if you're already full of anxiety. You cannot be filled with wisdom if you're already overflowing with assumptions. You cannot be filled with presence if you're too busy clinging to the past or reaching for the future. The cup that is already full can hold no water, and the heart that is cluttered with attachments has no space for joy. In Zen teachings, there's a story about a learned scholar who visits a master seeking wisdom. As they sit together, the master begins to pour tea. The scholar keeps talking, expressing all he already knows. The master keeps pouring until the tea spills over the cup and onto the floor. Alarmed, the scholar says, "Stop! The cup is full." And the master replies, "Exactly. You are like this cup. How can I teach you anything unless you first empty your cup?" This is the art of spiritual emptiness, not the emptiness of despair or void, but the sacred emptiness of surrender, the emptiness that makes space for something deeper to enter, the kind of emptiness that is not barren but ready. Many of us walk through life carrying far too much. We hold on to old wounds, unspoken resentments, memories that ache, identities that no longer fit us, and dreams that have expired. We carry expectations for who we think we should be, comparisons with others, and fears about what happens if we stop trying so hard. And yet, we wonder why we feel so distant from peace, why joy seems fleeting, why nothing we chase feels like enough. But how can you be filled with something sacred if your inner world is already overcrowded? Buddhism teaches the concept of shunyata, a Sanskrit word often translated as emptiness. But this emptiness is not a negative state. It is a recognition that all things are impermanent, interconnected, and constantly changing. It is the understanding that when we let go of our fixed ideas, identities, and attachments, we make space for a deeper, more fluid kind of wisdom to move through us. In other words, emptiness is not a loss. It is an opening, and this opening is where the miracle happens. When you begin to empty yourself of unnecessary thoughts, of controlling behaviors, of rigid stories, you become available. You become like a calm lake, reflecting the sky, open to receive the rain. In that openness, you don't lose yourself. You discover your true self, the self that is not defined by roles or achievements, but by awareness, by peace, by presence. This kind of emptiness is deeply healing. It doesn't require you to fix everything or figure everything out. It simply invites you to put everything down, just for a moment, and return to your breath. To be here, to be now, to be enough, not because you added something, but because you removed what was blocking your light. There's a sacred beauty in the act of releasing. In Buddhist meditation, this is practiced through letting go of each thought, each emotion, each moment as it passes. Not to escape reality, but to experience it fully, without interference. To see clearly, you must first clear the fog. To hear truth, you must quiet the noise. And this doesn't mean you abandon your responsibilities or desires. It means you begin to approach life with a lighter touch. You hold things gently, not tightly. You learn to be content in stillness, to find joy in simplicity, to feel whole even when nothing extraordinary is happening. Because in that spaciousness, life begins to enter you in new ways. Think about a room cluttered with furniture. It may feel suffocating, chaotic, overwhelming. But if you begin to remove what no longer belongs, you start to see the light coming in. You begin to feel the openness of the space. Your breath deepens, your mind clears, your body softens. Now imagine doing that with your inner life. What might shift if you began to release even a little of what you've been carrying? What if you let go of needing to be right? What if you let go of the old narrative that says you're not enough? What if you made space by simply pausing before reacting, speaking, or judging? In those small acts of letting go, you begin to empty, not in despair, but in preparation. You begin to trust that the universe doesn't need your control, it needs your availability. That joy doesn't arrive when everything is perfect, it arrives when you are present. That peace doesn't come from what you hold, but from what you release. There is also a deeper level to this emptiness. It is the space where grace lives, where the divine meets you, not through effort, but through surrender. Many people try to reach spiritual awakening by accumulation, more practices, more knowledge, more tools. But the deepest spiritual breakthroughs often arrive when we finally let go, when we stop reaching outward and turn inward, when we stop trying to fill ourselves and allow ourselves to be filled with silence, to be filled with breath, to be filled with love that has no condition, to be filled with life exactly as it is. And when this happens, when you are truly empty enough to be filled, there is no longer a need to chase, no longer a need to prove, no longer a need to grasp. You become like a cup placed gently under a waterfall, effortless, open, and receiving. This is the sacred path of emptiness, a path of courage, a path of trust, a path that asks not for more, but for less, for the willingness to release what is no longer aligned so that what is truly yours can arrive, not in chaos, but in peace, not in noise, but in stillness. So let yourself be empty. Let yourself release what weighs you down. Let yourself breathe without needing to fix everything. Let yourself trust the wisdom of letting go. And in that emptiness, something beautiful will happen. Life will begin to pour into you, not with pressure, but with grace, not with demand, but with peace. Because only an empty bowl can be filled. Only an open heart can be touched. Only a quiet mind can hear the truth. And only a soul that has let go of everything can finally receive everything that matters. The journey is within you, not ahead of you. Most people spend their entire lives walking towards something, a destination, a dream, a future that promises peace, success, happiness, or meaning. We chase after these things as if they live somewhere far away, waiting for us just beyond the next milestone, the next relationship, the next healing, the next transformation. It's as if life itself is always a little further down the road. And yet, no matter how much we move forward, the finish line seems to move with us. We achieve, but don't feel fulfilled. We arrive, but still feel lost. Why? Because the real journey, the one that brings peace, clarity, and awakening, was never out there. It was always in here, within your breath, within your awareness, within your capacity to be still, to listen, to open. The journey isn't about distance or speed, it's about depth. It's about coming home to yourself. Buddhism has always taught that the path to liberation is not a linear road marked by external achievements. It is an inward unfolding, a return to the present moment, a quiet reconnection with what has always been here but often ignored, your true nature. And yet we are so easily distracted. We think we need more information, more experiences, more success, more validation from others to finally become whole. We keep walking and walking, believing that one day we'll finally feel there. But the truth is, you cannot find what is already inside you by searching outside. You cannot run toward yourself. You must sit. You must turn inward. You must remember what you already are beneath the noise. This truth often arrives not in dramatic moments, but in silence, in stillness, in the spaces where we pause long enough to feel what is real. The journey within is not glamorous, it is not loud, it doesn't demand attention, but it is profound. It is the space where healing begins, where illusions fall away, where the heart learns to rest. When the Buddha set out on his journey for enlightenment, he did not walk toward a place. He walked away from distraction, from attachment, from false identities. His path wasn't a quest for something new. It was a shedding of what wasn't true. And finally, under the Bodhi tree, he sat. He stopped searching. And in that sacred stillness, he awakened. Not because he found something, but because he realized nothing had ever been missing. that same realization is available to you. Not in the future, not after you fix everything, not after you become someone better, but right now, in this breath, in this moment. Because everything you are looking for, peace, clarity, love, freedom, lives in the still space within your own being. It has never left you. You've only been looking away. The journey within is subtle. It's not measured by outward progress, but by inner presence. You can be sitting still and be miles ahead of where you were. And you can be busy, successful, admired, and still be lost. The question is not, how far have you gone? The deeper question is, how close have you come to yourself? In the external world, we chase perfection. We believe that once everything around us looks right, we'll feel right. But inner peace doesn't arrive when life becomes perfect. It arrives when you stop needing perfection. It arrives when you become curious about what's happening within you, when you begin to listen not to the world, but to your soul. This is why Buddhist practice emphasizes meditation, not to escape reality, but to enter it fully, to see clearly, to sit with yourself as you are, without distraction, without running. Because only in that sacred space of presence can you begin to unravel the layers of who you think you are and begin to feel the truth of who you've always been. But the journey inward isn't always easy. In fact, it's often more difficult than the external path. Because in turning inward, you must face what you've been avoiding: the pain, the fear, the loneliness, the unhealed wounds. You must sit with the questions that don't have quick answers. You must be willing to meet the parts of yourself you've tried to hide from the world, and even from yourself. But within that difficulty is a gift. Because every moment of inward honesty, every breath of awareness, every tear that falls in silence, every old story you release, that is the real transformation. Not because it changes how others see you, but because it changes how you see yourself. And when your vision clears, even just a little, you begin to walk through life with a different presence. You become softer, but stronger, quieter, but more powerful, more at ease, less in need of control. You stop searching for meaning in achievements, and you begin to live with meaning in your being. The present moment becomes your home, not a place to escape from. You find peace not in getting everything right, but in being deeply real. This is the essence of the journey within. It teaches you how to live from your truth, not towards someone else's idea of it. And perhaps the most beautiful part of this inner journey is that it never ends. It is not a race with a finish line. It is a path that unfolds as you walk it. With every breath, with every step, with every letting go, you go deeper. You see more. You feel more. You become more whole. Not by becoming someone new, but by returning to the someone you already are, beneath the layers of fear, conditioning, and comparison. You learn to love your own company. You learn to sit in silence without panic. You learn that joy doesn't need to be chased. It arises from your presence. You learn that pain isn't something to fear. It's something to hold with compassion. And you learn that wisdom doesn't come from more information. It comes from inner integration, from listening deeply, from living slowly, from being present fully. As the Buddha said, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. These are not just words. They are a map, a reminder, a gentle truth pointing you home to the temple inside you, a temple that has been waiting for you to return. And you don't need to go far. You don't need to travel across oceans or climb mountains or find a perfect teacher. The greatest journey of your life may happen in the space between two breaths. In the moment you close your eyes and ask, what is here, right now, within me? And listen, not with force, but with openness, not for answers, but for awareness. So let yourself stop chasing the horizon. Let yourself release the belief that life begins someday. Let yourself rest from the endless striving and realize You are already on the path. The path has always been beneath your feet. It has always led inward, and everything you've been waiting for is waiting within you. The journey is not ahead of you. It is within you. It lives in your presence. It breathes in your stillness. It reveals itself when you stop running and start returning. Return to your breath. Return to your body. Return to your heart. Return to now. Because this is where the real path begins. Not out there, not later, not when, but here, now, within you. Peace comes when you stop needing to be understood. One of the most exhausting pursuits in life is the constant effort to be understood, to explain ourselves, to justify our emotions, to convince others of our intentions, our pain, our story, our truth. We seek to be seen fully, heard clearly, and accepted deeply. And when we feel misunderstood, when someone misjudges us, doubts us, dismisses us, or twists our words, we feel invisible, alone, unseen, and we suffer. This desire to be understood is deeply human. It begins in childhood, when we look into the eyes of our parents, hoping they can mirror back to us a sense of safety, validation, and unconditional acceptance. As we grow older, that need often evolves, but it never disappears. We want our friends to understand why we made certain choices. We want our partners to understand the fears we carry silently. We want society to understand our uniqueness, our sensitivity, our way of seeing the world. And yet, more often than not, we encounter the opposite. We are misunderstood, not because people are cruel, but because every person sees the world through the lens of their own wounds, beliefs, conditioning, and limitations. Their interpretation of your actions is not always about you. It's often about them. Their inability to understand your softness may reflect their own fear of vulnerability. Their rejection of your boundaries may be rooted in their discomfort with self-respect. Their confusion about your silence may be because they have never learned how to sit with stillness. Buddhism invites us to look at this universal struggle not with anger or self-pity, but with insight. It reminds us that the root of much of our suffering lies not in the fact that we are misunderstood, but in our attachment to being understood, in our clinging to others' validation as a condition for our inner peace, in our belief that we must be seen and accepted in order to feel worthy, whole, or at ease. But what if you didn't need to be understood to be at peace? What if the path to freedom was not paved with explanation, but with release? When you stop needing to be understood, something powerful begins to shift. Your energy, once poured into explaining, defending, or fixing other people's perceptions, returns to you. Your mind, once trapped in loops of "why don't they get me?" begins to quiet. Your heart, once bruised by constant misinterpretation, begins to heal. You begin to reclaim your inner authority, the knowing that your truth does not become less valid just because someone else cannot comprehend it. And in that reclamation, you touch real peace. This peace is not fragile. It does not depend on how others respond to you. It is rooted in the understanding that the world's approval is a moving target, and often an illusion. That trying to control how others see you is like trying to catch the wind in your hands. No matter how tightly you hold, it slips through your fingers. But when you stop chasing the wind, when you open your hands and simply be, something extraordinary happens. You begin to experience the stillness that was always available beneath the noise. There is a deep and liberating strength in saying, "I don't need you to understand me, I understand myself." That statement is not bitterness, it is not arrogance, it is clarity. It is the wisdom of the awakened heart that knows, my worth is not up for debate. My intentions, even when unseen, are real. My silence does not need subtitles. My boundaries do not require permission. My softness is not weakness, just because you do not recognize its power. This inner clarity is cultivated not through defiance, but through mindfulness, through the quiet discipline of turning inward instead of outward. through the courage to sit with your truth in the presence of misunderstanding without the need to defend it. Imagine a still lake. Its surface is smooth, reflecting the sky, untouched by wind. Now imagine someone tossing stones into it. Accusations, judgments, misinterpretations. The surface may ripple, but the depth remains calm. The lake doesn't chase after the stone. It doesn't rise up in rage or shrink in fear. It simply absorbs, settles, and returns to stillness. You can live that way too. When someone misunderstands you, it is not always your responsibility to correct them. Sometimes their perception is their lesson, not your burden. Sometimes your silence speaks more than your explanations ever could. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is to let others sit with their version of the story and allow life to teach them whatever it needs to. Your peace does not require their comprehension. There's an old Zen saying, "Those who know don't talk. Those who talk don't know." This doesn't mean you should never speak your truth. It means you learn to discern when it is wise to speak and when it is wise to simply be. When your truth is misunderstood, you are offered a choice. Try to control the external narrative or return to the internal knowing. The first will drain you. The second will free you. Of course, this doesn't mean that human connection and understanding aren't valuable. They are. Being truly seen is one of the most healing experiences we can have. But the moment your well-being becomes dependent on being seen by others, you hand them your power. And that is a fragile foundation to build your peace upon. Because sometimes you will be misunderstood even by those closest to you. You will be seen through the lens of someone's projections, past experiences, or fears. You may be called selfish for protecting your energy. You may be called weak for showing emotion. You may be judged for walking a path others do not understand. And if you are always trying to fix those perceptions, you will lose yourself trying to win a game that has no end. But when you anchor yourself in inner knowing, the misunderstanding no longer defines you. You begin to live not from reaction, but from alignment. Not from fear, but from centeredness. This shift also opens your heart to others in a new way. When you stop needing to be understood, you start understanding others more deeply. You begin to see how much pain lives behind judgment, how much confusion lives behind anger, how much loneliness hides behind criticism. And instead of meeting misunderstanding with defensiveness, you meet it with compassion, not because you agree, but because you are free. Freedom means letting go, not just of possessions, but of the need to be validated. Freedom means recognizing that your peace is not a public project. It is an intimate relationship between you and the truth inside you. Freedom means accepting that some people will never understand your path, and that's okay. It was never theirs to walk. It was never meant to make sense to them. As you walk deeper into your spiritual practice, you will begin to notice how much quieter your inner world becomes, not because you've silenced others, but because you've stopped giving them so much power. You begin to feel light, not because you've avoided life's weight, but because you've stopped carrying what was never yours. And with that lightness comes space. Space to feel peace. Space to enjoy solitude. Space to connect with others authentically, not performatively. Space to live your truth gently and firmly, without apology. You become like the sky, vast, steady, unbothered by passing clouds of opinion. You become like the mountain, grounded, unmoved by the shifting weather of public perception. You become like the river, flowing, adapting, but always returning to your own source. So when you feel the sting of being misunderstood, pause, breathe, turn inward. Ask yourself, do I understand myself? Are my intentions clear in my own heart? Have I acted with integrity? Am I aligned with the truth I feel in my bones? If the answer is yes, then let that be enough. Let that be your shelter. Let that be your peace. Because when you stop needing to be understood, you begin to live with a deeper kind of dignity, a quiet confidence, a rooted presence, the kind that doesn't need to be explained, only felt. And in that presence, you become free, not because everyone finally sees you clearly, but because you do. And that clarity will carry you through anything. Letting go is not losing. It's returning to yourself. There comes a time on every spiritual path where you are faced with a choice that does not feel easy. It is the choice to let go, not just of what hurts you, but also of what once comforted you. To release not only what causes suffering, but also what once gave you identity, security, or a sense of belonging. It is in these moments that the heart trembles, not because it doesn't know the truth, but because it's afraid of what will remain when the letting go is complete. We are taught by the world that letting go is a kind of loss, that when we let go, we become less, that something is taken away from us, and that what we release will leave a void too deep to bear. But Buddhism invites us to look deeper, to turn the gaze inward and discover something more honest and powerful. The truth is, letting go is not about loss. It's about return. It's not the end of something, but the beginning of coming home to yourself, again and again. Letting go is not weakness. It is not defeat. It is not the absence of love, care, or connection. Letting go is an act of strength, of clarity, of inner awakening. It is what happens when you realize that holding on has become heavier than releasing, that the grasp itself has become the cause of your suffering. And so, in one deep breath, with trembling hands and a courageous heart, you loosen your grip. Not because you don't care, but because you finally care enough about your own peace. In the teachings of the Buddha, attachment is named as the root of suffering, not because the things we hold on to are inherently bad, but because we cling to them in ways that create dependency, illusion, and inner resistance. We attach to people, roles, dreams, memories, and even pain, thinking they define us. But what happens when those things change? What happens when they leave? What happens when they no longer serve the soul we are becoming? If your peace depends on something outside of you never changing, then your peace is conditional. And conditional peace is always fragile. The act of letting go is a turning point. It is where the story you've been telling yourself is put down, and space is created for a new story to begin. But here's the beautiful paradox. That new story isn't about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you were before the layers of fear, attachment, and expectation were added. It's about removing the excess, the noise, the illusions, and returning to the simplicity of your essence. So what does it actually mean to let go? Letting go is not erasing the past. It's releasing your resistance to it. Letting go is not pretending something didn't matter. It's honoring its role in your journey without allowing it to define your present. Letting go is not cutting off emotion. It's feeling deeply and fully, then setting the emotion down with compassion. Letting go is not running away. It's standing still in your truth and choosing peace over control. Letting go is not about getting rid of something forcefully. It's about surrendering gracefully to what is no longer aligned. Think of a tree in autumn. It doesn't panic when the leaves begin to fall. It doesn't cling to what is meant to be released. It simply trusts the cycle. It lets the old leaves drop, knowing that space must be made for something new to grow. The letting go is not a death. It is a preparation. And the same is true for you. When you let go, you are not falling apart. You are clearing the way. In your own life, there are likely things asking to be released. Perhaps it's a relationship that no longer honors your growth. Perhaps it's a belief about yourself that was never true to begin with. Perhaps it's a version of you that fit a past season but no longer serves the person you are becoming. And yet, you hesitate. You grip tightly. You tell yourself, what if I need this? What if this is all I am? But if you're honest, you can feel the truth pulsing beneath the surface. You already know it's time. The hesitation comes not from truth, but from fear. We fear the unknown that follows the letting go. We fear the emptiness. We fear the space where something used to be. But in Buddhist teaching, that space, the one created by letting go, is not emptiness in the negative sense. It is sacred space. It is open, alive and full of possibility. When your hands are no longer full of what once was, they become open to receive what can be. And in that space, you begin to hear your own voice again. The voice that was drowned out by all the noise of holding on. You begin to feel your own breath again, not shallow and rushed, but deep and steady. You begin to meet yourself again, not the version others needed you to be, but the one that always existed beneath the masks. The version of you that is not tied to outcomes or identities, but to presence, awareness, peace. Letting go also invites grief, and that's okay. Grief is not a sign that you made the wrong choice. It's a natural part of the process. You are allowed to grieve what no longer fits. You are allowed to honor what once mattered. You are allowed to weep as the old leaves fall. Grief doesn't mean you're clinging, it means you're human. But when you grieve consciously, with compassion and presence, that grief becomes healing. It becomes a river that washes away what was never meant to stay. As you walk this path of release, you may feel lighter, but also raw. Emptied, but also uncertain. This is the sacred in-between, the space between what you've released and what has not yet arrived. In Buddhism, this is a space of deep opportunity. It is the field where awareness sharpens, where ego softens, where presence becomes your teacher. It is here, in this space, that the most profound inner transformations occur. Not because you're gaining something, but because you're no longer distracted by what you no longer need. It is in this in-between where you discover, I was never the roles I played. I was never the dreams I chased. I was never the pain I endured. I am the one who was witnessing it all. I am the one who is still here, still breathing, still becoming. When you let go, you return to that witness. You return to the soul that has always been quietly watching beneath the surface, unmoved by gain or loss, untouched by praise or blame. This witness is your true self. It cannot be damaged, it cannot be lost, it cannot be abandoned, and it does not need anyone else's permission to feel at peace. This realization is the ultimate freedom. You stop looking for yourself in what you possess. You stop searching for yourself in who stays or who leaves. You stop defining yourself by what you have or what you've lost. You return to the one who was always there, the quiet presence beneath it all. And from this place, you begin to live differently. You begin to love without clinging. You begin to give without expecting. You begin to dream without grasping. You begin to walk through the world, not in fear of what might leave, but in gratitude for what is here. You stop asking life to stay the same. You stop demanding certainty. You stop needing everything to make sense. And instead, you start flowing with the rhythm of impermanence. You start trusting the intelligence of change. You start allowing life to unfold. Not because you've given up, but because you've finally awakened to the deeper truth. You are not here to hold on to everything. You are here to experience, to learn, to grow, to let go, and to return. Return again and again to stillness, to awareness, to your breath, to your heart, to the presence that is always here, waiting for you. So the next time life asks you to let go, don't see it as a punishment. See it as an invitation to return, to strip away the noise, to remember what really matters, to find the clarity that only space can offer, and to feel, perhaps for the first time in a long while, the quiet joy of being whole without holding anything. Letting go is not losing. Letting go is remembering. Letting go is returning. And in that return, you will find everything you thought you had lost. Peace, clarity, lightness, and the steady, enduring presence of the self you were always meant to be. The soul grows in silence, not in noise. In the modern world, noise has become our constant companion. It follows us into every room, clings to us in every moment, and fills the empty spaces we once reserved for reflection. It comes from the outside. News feeds, notifications, conversations, distractions. But it also comes from within. Restless thoughts, old stories, anxieties, regrets, and 1,000 unresolved questions, all swirling together like a storm inside our minds. We wake up to noise, we fall asleep to noise, and in between, we rarely notice just how far it pulls us from ourselves. Yet despite all this noise, or perhaps because of it, something inside us quietly hungers for stillness. The soul, though often drowned out, continues to long for what it knows to be true. Growth does not happen in chaos. It happens in silence, deep, nourishing, patient silence. Not the kind of silence that is simply the absence of sound, but the kind of silence that is full of presence, the still space where the mind softens, the heart speaks, and the soul is finally heard. In Buddhism, silence is not emptiness. It is sacred space. It is the cradle of wisdom. It is the field where insight blooms and suffering begins to loosen its grip. And perhaps most importantly, it is the place where your soul grows, not through striving, not through external stimulation, but through returning to the quiet awareness that has always lived within you. But this kind of silence is not easy to enter, not because it's far away, but because we've built our lives in the opposite direction. From a young age, we are taught to fill the quiet, to talk through discomfort, to answer every question, to be constantly entertained, productive, or distracted. And so silence begins to feel foreign, even threatening. We start to equate silence with loneliness. We confuse it with emptiness. We run from it without even realizing what we're running from. But the great paradox is this: the more we fill our lives with noise, the more disconnected we feel. The more stimulation we seek, the more hollow we become. The more we chase answers from outside, the more lost we feel inside, because the soul cannot be heard in noise. It cannot breathe in constant motion. It needs stillness to stretch. It needs space to speak. It needs silence to grow. Think of a seed planted deep in the soil. It does not grow by being exposed to noise or constant attention. It grows in darkness, in quiet, in stillness. It breaks open beneath the surface, slowly and silently. It sends roots into the earth, unseen and unheard. And one day, it breaks through into the light. Not because it was forced, but because it was given the space and silence to become. You are the same. Your soul is not growing when you are constantly reacting, rushing, consuming, comparing. Your soul grows in those sacred pauses, in the quiet moments when you turn inward, when you sit with your breath, when you stop trying to fix, achieve, or explain, and simply allow yourself to be. It grows when you create space between the noise of the world and the truth of your own being. This is why meditation lies at the heart of Buddhist practice, not as a goal-oriented task, but as a returning, a gentle homecoming to the present moment, a reminder that you are not your thoughts, your emotions, or your circumstances. Beneath all of that is the still presence of awareness, the silent witness of your life. And when you sit in meditation, even if just for a few minutes, you begin to peel back the layers. You begin to hear what's real. You begin to grow, not outward, but inward. But silence does more than grow your soul. It heals it. In silence, the pain you've buried can rise gently to the surface, not to overwhelm you, but to be held with compassion. In silence, the anger you've denied can begin to soften. In silence, the grief you've postponed can move through you like a quiet river. And in silence, the joy that's been hidden beneath fear can finally be felt again. Not because you found something new, but because you finally stopped long enough to feel what's already there. We often say we want peace, but we fill our lives with everything that prevents it. True peace is not found in achievement, in distraction, or in pleasure. It is found in silence. And not just in the silence of meditation, but in the silence of being, in the moments between doing, in the spaces between words, in the gentle breath between thoughts. It's in the silence of a slow morning, before the world demands your attention. It's in the silence of watching sunlight move across the floor. It's in the silence of sitting beside someone without needing to speak. It's in the silence of walking through nature and remembering you are part of something vast and ancient and sacred. It's in the silence of closing your eyes and asking yourself, what do I truly need in this moment? And in those moments, growth happens quietly. The kind of growth that can't be measured or explained. The kind that doesn't announce itself, but changes you from the inside out. You become softer, more present, more aware. Your reactions slow down. Your compassion deepens. Your clarity sharpens. Not because you've added something, but because you've removed what was noisy and unnecessary. But here's something important to understand. Silence doesn't always feel peaceful at first. Often, when we first begin to embrace stillness, we are confronted by what we've been avoiding. The discomfort rises. The restlessness surfaces, the old wounds begin to speak, and it can be tempting to turn back to the noise, to fill the silence with anything that will distract us. But if you stay, with gentleness, with breath, with compassion, you will find that beneath the discomfort is something steady and eternal, the soul, the witness, the quiet presence that has always been with you. This is why the Buddha taught that liberation is found not through accumulation, but through letting go, not through gaining more, but through turning inward. In silence, the ego loses its grip. The mind slows its chatter. The heart finds its rhythm. And the soul, so often buried beneath the rubble of modern life, rises to the surface and reminds you who you truly are. You do not need to shout to be powerful. You do not need to be busy to be worthy. You do not need to explain yourself to belong. In silence, you begin to remember your intrinsic value, not because of what you do, but because of what you are. And what you are is already whole. In a world that constantly pulls you outward, silence calls you inward. In a world that rewards loudness, silence offers truth. In a world that chases noise, silence becomes sacred. So create space for silence, not just once a week or during a retreat, but every day, even if only for a few minutes. Turn off the noise, put down the phone, step away from the screen, sit, breathe, listen, not for answers but for presence, not for solutions but for stillness. Let yourself be uncomfortable at first. Let the mind race. Let the thoughts swirl, and then, beneath all of it, notice the silence that remains, the awareness that watches, the peace that does not depend on anything changing. That silence is not empty, it is full of you, the real you, the unconditioned, unchained, unburdened you. And as you return to that silence more and more, you will begin to change, not by trying, but by allowing. You will grow, not through effort, but through presence. You will begin to live, not from reaction, but from awareness. And in that awareness, the soul expands. The soul doesn't grow in noise. It grows in the quiet, in the stillness, in the breath, in the spaces you create between the doing and the becoming. And as it grows, so does your peace. So does your compassion. So does your capacity to live fully, love deeply, and be truly free. Let silence be your teacher. Let it be your friend. Let it be the sacred ground where your soul returns to its natural rhythm, not rushed, not forced, not controlled, just gently unfolding, just quietly becoming. Because the most profound growth is never loud. It does not shout. It does not demand attention. It moves in silence like roots growing deep beneath the soil, unseen but essential, invisible but powerful. And in that silence, you will find what no noise could ever offer: yourself. Real freedom begins when you no longer fear change. There is a quiet thread that runs through the heart of every human life, a tension that rises whenever we sense that something is shifting. Whether it's the end of a season, the fading of a relationship, the loss of what once felt certain, or the inner sense that we are outgrowing parts of ourselves, change, no matter how natural, can feel like a kind of death. Even when we know it's time, even when we sense it's necessary, change often stirs something deep in us. Resistance, anxiety, sadness, fear. Because change, by its nature, asks us to leave behind what we've known. It invites us to step into unfamiliar territory. It calls us to let go, not only of what no longer serves us, but of the illusion of control we've built around the idea that life should stay the same. But in Buddhism, change is not the enemy. It is not something to run from or fear. It is the very fabric of existence. It is the nature of all things. Everything that arises must also pass. Everything that is born must also end. Everything that exists in form must eventually dissolve. The Buddha called this anicca, the principle of impermanence. And rather than offering this truth as something bleak or hopeless, he offered it as liberation. Because the more deeply we understand impermanence, the more we begin to see that the only real suffering comes from our resistance to it. The more we try to hold on to what must change, the more pain we create. But when we stop resisting, when we begin to move with the rhythm of life rather than against it, something shifts. What once felt threatening becomes natural. What once caused fear begins to reveal hidden wisdom. And slowly, quietly, we begin to taste what real freedom feels like. Freedom is not the ability to control your life so that nothing ever changes. Freedom is the ability to remain centered and open as life inevitably changes all around you. Real freedom is not found in certainty, but in the capacity to welcome uncertainty without collapsing. It is found in trusting that you can meet life as it comes, not because you can predict it, but because you are learning to flow with it. Think of the seasons. The leaves don't cling to the trees in autumn. The flowers don't mourn their own blooming when winter arrives. The river does not resist the shape of the rocks it flows around. The sky does not protest the passing of clouds. Nature moves, constantly and without hesitation, and yet it is not anxious. It is not clinging. It is not afraid. Because nature remembers what we often forget. Change is not a threat. It is a teacher. We suffer not because life changes, but because we expect it not to. We suffer not because things end, but because we believed they would last forever. We suffer not because the unknown is unkind, but because we have not yet learned how to trust it. But when we begin to welcome change as part of life's sacred design, we start to see that every ending holds the seeds of a new beginning. Every falling apart makes space for something more aligned. Every shift is an invitation to shed old skins and step more fully into who we are becoming. Change does not come to break us. It comes to reveal the parts of us that are ready to grow. And yes, growth is often uncomfortable. Letting go of what once felt familiar, even if it no longer fits, can stir grief. Saying goodbye to a version of yourself that carried you through hard times, even if you've outgrown it, can bring sadness. But beneath that sadness is something sacred, because you are not just losing something, you are clearing space. You are making room. You are returning to the deeper river of your life, the one that flows beneath the surface of who you thought you were and carries you toward who you truly are. In Buddhist meditation, we are taught to watch the breath, not because the breath itself is extraordinary, but because it is always changing. With every inhale and every exhale, we are practicing impermanence. We are learning, breath by breath, to let go. We are learning that we do not need to hold on to the inhale in fear of the exhale. We do not need to grasp the moment to keep it from passing. We can simply be with it. Feel it, honor it, and let it go. And in this practice, something profound unfolds. We begin to trust that we are not the breath. We are the awareness that watches the breath. We are not the change. We are the stillness that holds the change. We are not the waves. We are the ocean. This is where real freedom lives. Not in trying to stop the waves, not in building walls around your life to keep it from moving, but in becoming the ocean itself, deep, vast, and capable of holding all of it, the joy and the sorrow, the beginning and the end, the rise and the fall. But how do we do this in daily life when change feels threatening, when something we depended on begins to shift, when the ground beneath us moves? We begin by softening. We begin by noticing where we are resisting. We ask ourselves gently and honestly, what am I holding on to that no longer holds me? What am I afraid will happen if I let go? What story am I telling myself about this change? And is it true? We meet ourselves with compassion. We allow the fear to be there without letting it decide everything. We breathe into the discomfort. We place one hand on the heart and remind ourselves, I can do hard things. I can feel what this brings without running from it. I can trust the unfolding of my life, even when I do not yet understand it. And we remember, everything that has changed in the past has brought us to where we are now. And if we are honest, many of the things we once feared we could never survive, we did. We are still here. We are still breathing, we are still becoming, and so we trust again, not blindly, but with wisdom, with the quiet strength that comes from experience. We trust not that everything will be easy, but that we will meet it with presence. And as we do, something else happens. We begin to experience joy, not the fragile joy that depends on things going our way, but the resilient joy that comes from being fully alive, from showing up for life as it is, not as we wish it to be, from being curious instead of controlling, from being open instead of closed, from realizing that when we stop fearing change, we stop fearing life itself. Because life is change, it is motion, it is unfolding, and the more we embrace this, the more we begin to live. Not from resistance, but from rhythm, not from fear, but from flow. We start to see change not as something to brace against, but as something to dance with. And in that dance, we find ourselves again. We find the parts of us that are flexible, adaptable, creative, and wise. We find our breath, our center, our truth, and we realize freedom was never about holding on. It was about learning how to move, how to bend without breaking, how to soften instead of harden, how to trust the tide. So the next time life begins to shift, remember this: you are not losing control. You are being invited to release it. You are not being punished. You are being asked to grow. You are not falling apart. You are being rearranged. And the more you allow this, the more you surrender to the movement of life, the more you return to the present, not grasping at the past or projecting into the future, but simply being here, you will begin to feel something unexpected: peace. Not the peace of everything staying the same, but the peace of knowing you don't need it to. Not the peace of a life without change, but the peace of a heart that has stopped fighting it. Not the peace of certainty, but the peace of trust. And that is real freedom, the kind that cannot be taken from you, the kind that does not depend on circumstances, the kind that lives quietly in your breath, in your presence, in your willingness to let life move through you. Freedom is not waiting on the other side of change. Freedom is found the moment you stop fearing it, and in that moment you become what you always were beneath the fear: whole, open, free. Patience is the wisdom of trusting the unseen. There is a quiet strength that is slowly being forgotten in this world, a sacred, grounding presence that once sat like a guardian at the center of our souls. It is not loud, it is not urgent, and it does not demand to be seen. But when it is there, you feel it, like the slow pull of the tide, like the silent resilience of a mountain, like the deep breath that steadies your heart before the tears fall. That strength is patience. In a world addicted to speed, noise, answers, and instant results, patience is often misunderstood as passivity or weakness. But in the teachings of Buddhism, patience, ksanti, is not the absence of action. It is not waiting while doing nothing. It is a powerful, disciplined, courageous trust in the process of life. It is the ability to hold space for becoming without needing to rush to resolution. It is the wisdom to know that what is unfolding does not need your control, only your presence. Patience is not born from comfort. It is born from awareness. It is a state of inner readiness that doesn't demand the fruit before its season, that doesn't tear open the cocoon to see the wings, that doesn't scream at the flower to bloom faster. It understands that everything sacred takes time, that real transformation is always slow, that the most meaningful changes happen beneath the surface, unseen, unmeasured, and often misunderstood by the impatient mind. But why is patience so difficult? Because the human mind is wired to crave certainty. We want to know what's coming. We want to see proof that our efforts are working. We want to understand the why before we surrender to the what. And when life becomes unclear, when prayers feel unanswered, when progress seems invisible, when we feel like we're moving through fog, we begin to panic. We begin to question everything. And in that panic, we often rush toward false solutions, force what isn't ready, or give up altogether. Patience is what keeps you steady in those moments. Not because it gives you clarity, but because it helps you hold space for the unknown. It helps you stay soft when things get hard. It reminds you that not all wisdom arrives quickly, and that some of the most beautiful answers cannot be found through analysis or effort, but through deep listening and time. Consider how the ocean meets the shore, never in haste, never late, never early. It arrives when it is meant to. The tide does not question its pace. It does not worry if the world is watching. It moves with a rhythm older than thought, deeper than reason. Your life, too, moves with a rhythm. And sometimes that rhythm slows, not to punish you, but to prepare you. Not to hold you back, but to settle you into something deeper. In Buddhist practice, patience is seen as one of the paramitas, or perfections, virtues cultivated on the path to enlightenment. But unlike some other virtues that seem more active, like generosity or energy, patience feels quiet, internal, and yet it is one of the most powerful forms of inner strength you can ever embody, because it allows you to walk through uncertainty without becoming consumed by it. It allows you to stay with the question when the answer hasn't yet arrived. It allows you to breathe even when the future feels uncertain. Think of the bamboo seed. When planted, it lies dormant beneath the soil for years. Nothing appears above the ground, nothing to show for the effort, nothing to convince the eye that something real is happening. But underground, its roots are growing, wide, deep, preparing to support something tall and strong. And then, one day, almost suddenly, it bursts through the soil and grows rapidly, rising feet within days. But that visible growth is only possible because of the long, invisible years of rooting. Your life is like that too. There are seasons where nothing seems to be happening, where your prayers feel unanswered, your healing feels stuck, your growth feels invisible. But underneath the surface, something is forming, something that cannot be rushed, something that needs this exact silence, this exact waiting, this exact time to take root in a way that will support everything to come. And if you abandon the process because you cannot yet see the outcome, you miss the miracle that was growing in the dark. Patience is the faith that something good is forming even when there is no proof yet. It is trusting the soil even when the seed hasn't sprouted. It is standing in the middle of your process and saying, even if I cannot see it, I believe something sacred is happening here. But patience isn't just about waiting for what you want, it's about how you wait. Do you wait with resentment, bitterness, and anxiety? Or do you wait with curiosity, softness, and presence? Do you fill the waiting with noise and distraction? Or do you use it to deepen your breath, your awareness, your trust? Do you resist the pace of life, or do you begin to move with it, slower, more mindfully, more in tune with what is rather than obsessed with what should be? These questions matter because your waiting is not a passive space, it is a creative one. What you do in the waiting shapes what emerges from it, and patience is the tool that shapes that space into something fertile, something meaningful, something alive. In meditation, we practice patience every time we return to the breath, every time the mind wanders and we bring it back, every time discomfort arises and we stay, every time we're tempted to stop, but instead we sit longer. And what we discover is that the breakthrough often comes not in forcing the mind to be quiet, but in waiting long enough for the mind to quiet itself. And this mirrors life. You don't always need to force a solution. You need to stay long enough for clarity to arise. You don't always need to chase the next thing. You need to stay present long enough to receive what this moment is offering. You don't always need to fix what's broken. You need to hold it gently, quietly, patiently, so healing can unfold in its own time. Patience teaches you to respect the pace of your own becoming. It reminds you that you are not late, you are not behind, you are not stuck. You are simply in a sacred stage of growth that is not meant to be rushed. It teaches you to love the journey, not just the destination. To sit with the questions, not just crave the answers. To be okay with not knowing, not because it's easy, but because it's real. Real life is not a race, it's a rhythm, and patience is how you learn to dance to that rhythm. It is how you learn to breathe deeper in the pauses, to smile even when things are unclear, to trust that the universe is not ignoring you, but preparing you. You are not being delayed, you are being shaped. You are not being forgotten, you are being fortified. And every moment you choose patience, you are aligning with something far greater than your fear. You are aligning with the wisdom of life itself. So, take this as your invitation to slow down, to trust the unseen, to root yourself deeply in the knowing that you are not waiting for your life to begin. Your life is already happening. The waiting itself is sacred. The waiting itself is part of the miracle. And when you finally arrive at that moment you've been hoping for, you will not be the same person who first longed for it. You will be someone deeper, softer, wiser. Someone who knows how to trust the unfolding. Someone who carries peace not because life is perfect, but because they are no longer rushing to escape it. This is the wisdom of patience. This is the strength of trusting what you cannot yet see. This is the freedom of walking slowly, intentionally, awake. And when you live this way, the unseen becomes a friend, not a threat. The unknown becomes a space of creation, not of fear. And you, my dear soul, become a steady presence in a world that has forgotten how to wait. Patience is not something you add to your life. It is something you return to. It is your natural rhythm. It is the pace of truth. It is the heart of stillness. And it is there, always waiting for you to remember. You were never meant to hold everything alone. There is a quiet story that many of us carry, tucked deep within the folds of our thoughts, so subtle we may not even realize we believe it. It is the belief that we must carry the weight of life entirely on our own. That to be strong means to endure silently. That to be spiritual means to transcend suffering without speaking of it. That to be worthy means never asking for help, never burdening others, never showing our cracks. This belief grows slowly, seeded in early disappointments and watered by the small ways we learned that others might not always stay, listen, or understand. Perhaps we once reached for someone in a moment of vulnerability and were met with silence or dismissal. Perhaps we were praised only when we succeeded and scolded when we struggled. Perhaps the world around us demanded composure, not truth, perfection, not presence. And so, over time, we learned to hide our pain in the quiet hours, to hold our grief behind our smiles, to appear whole even when we were slowly unraveling inside. And yet, no matter how strong we try to be, there comes a moment when the burden becomes too heavy to carry alone. A moment when we feel ourselves bending under the weight of unspoken fears, uncried tears, and unheard prayers. A moment when something inside us whispers, "I can't do this by myself anymore." But just as quickly, another voice arises, sharper and colder. "You have to. No one else will." In the teachings of Buddhism, however, we are gently invited to unlearn this story. We are reminded that the path is not meant to be walked in isolation, that strength is not the same as silence, and that the Dharma, the truth of life, is not about carrying everything with stoic detachment, but about meeting what arises with awareness, compassion, and connection. The Buddha himself did not awaken alone. Though his realization came through deep meditation, his journey unfolded in the context of community, of spiritual friends, kalyana mitta, of teachers, of seekers walking side by side, each holding space for the other's unfolding. In fact, when asked what part of the spiritual path spiritual friendship was, the Buddha replied, "It is the whole of the spiritual life." That is how important it is, not a supplement to practice, but its very foundation. You see, we were never meant to hold everything alone because nothing in this world exists alone. The tree does not stand by itself. It is rooted in soil, fed by sunlight, nourished by rain, and supported by wind. The wave does not rise by itself. It is moved by the ocean's vast breath. The flower does not bloom in isolation. It is pollinated by bees, warmed by sun, and grown by earth. And you too are part of this great interwoven web of existence. You are not separate. You never have been. Still, it can be difficult to reach out, to allow ourselves to be seen in our vulnerability, especially when the world celebrates independence and strength as isolation. But true strength is not in carrying everything. True strength is in knowing what to let go of, when to ask for help, and how to trust the invisible threads that connect us to each other. True strength is in letting your heart soften enough to be held. Let's pause and reflect. How often have you carried pain alone simply because you believed you had no other choice? How many times have you silenced your own cry because you thought no one would understand? How many days have you smiled while quietly feeling like you were falling apart inside? These moments are not signs of weakness. They are signs of deep longing, the longing to be supported, to be known, to be met not just by words, but by presence. And here's the truth. There are arms willing to hold you. There are hearts that can sit with your sorrow without needing to fix it. There are souls that resonate with yours, even if they have not yet arrived in your life. The challenge is not that support does not exist. The challenge is that we've been conditioned to believe we are not allowed to need it. But you are allowed to need. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to lean, to cry, to ask, to receive. You are allowed to speak your truth even if your voice trembles. You are allowed to be both a seeker of peace and a soul in pain. These things are not contradictions. They are the full, complex, and beautiful truth of being human. In Buddhist practice, the Sangha, the community of practitioners, is one of the three jewels: the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. These are not merely poetic symbols. They are essential aspects of awakening. The Sangha represents the truth that we grow most deeply in connection, that healing happens not just in silence, but in shared space. That sometimes the most powerful meditation is not done on the cushion, but in the gentle presence of someone who sees you without judgment. Yet to accept this, we must learn to trust again, to slowly dismantle the walls we've built around our hearts, to begin unlearning the reflex that says, "I'm fine," when we're not. This does not mean we must share our hearts with everyone, but it does mean we begin to honor the quiet truth inside us that whispers, "I long to be seen. I long to be supported. I long to not carry this alone." And in that moment, we take a small but courageous step. We speak, we reach, we soften. Not all support will come in the form of people. Sometimes support arrives in stillness, in the way a tree stands beside you as you sit in silence, in the way the wind gently brushes your face when you walk with grief, in the way a poem meets you exactly where you are, in the way the breath returns to you after you thought you had lost it. Life is full of subtle companions, quiet holders of space. They are not always loud, but they are there, and when we become still enough, we feel them. This is the essence of Buddhist compassion, not just for others, but for yourself. To offer your heart the same softness you extend to others, to say to your inner world, "You do not have to be strong all the time. You are safe to be human here." This is what changes everything, because when we allow ourselves to be held, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, we remember what the ego forgets, that we are not separate, that we do not have to carry the entire weight of our lives alone. Letting yourself be supported is not a weakness. It is an act of spiritual wisdom. It is a profound recognition that your soul, like all things in nature, was designed to be in relationship with others, with the earth, with silence, with the sacred. You do not need to have all the answers. You do not need to pretend you are okay when you are not. You only need to be present with what is, and let yourself be held within it. So breathe. Breathe deeply into the parts of you that are tired, into the parts that feel unseen, into the shoulders that have carried too much for too long. Let the breath remind you, you are not alone. You never were. Let the earth beneath you remind you, you are supported. Let the stillness around you remind you, you are being held. And when the time comes, when you feel strong again, you will hold others too, not because you must, but because your heart has become spacious, because you've known the power of being held, and now you carry that power within you. This is how we awaken, together, by remembering that we are allowed to lean, that our strength is not measured by how much we carry, but by how open we are to receiving help, that we do not walk this path alone, even when it feels that way, and that in allowing ourselves to be supported, we return to one of the deepest truths of the Dharma. You were never meant to hold everything alone. Healing happens when you stop rushing your life. In the quiet corners of your soul, there exists a rhythm. It is not fast. It is not loud. It does not compete with the noise of the world or measure itself against the clocks and calendars you've learned to obey. This rhythm is slow, gentle, patient. It mirrors the steady opening of a lotus flower, the unhurried rise of the sun each morning, the quiet unfolding of the seasons. And yet, in a world built on urgency, this inner rhythm is often drowned out, ignored, or silenced altogether. We live in a culture that glorifies speed, that equates faster with better, busier with more important, and constant movement with progress. From a young age, we are taught to race toward the next thing, the next grade, the next goal, the next achievement, the next version of ourselves that will finally be enough. We are praised for productivity, admired for ambition, and celebrated for our ability to keep going no matter what we're feeling inside. But beneath the surface of all this rushing lies a quiet ache, a whisper that grows louder in the stillness, a question we're afraid to ask out loud. What if I've been moving so fast that I've forgotten how to actually live? Buddhism teaches that suffering arises when we are out of alignment with reality, and reality, at its core, is not in a rush. The present moment is not going anywhere. Your breath does not demand that you move faster. Your body does not require you to hurry in order to heal. Life, as it unfolds in its natural state, is slow, organic, circular, and deeply rooted in process. And when we rush, we move out of sync with this truth. We start treating life like a race instead of a relationship. Healing, in particular, cannot be rushed. And yet, when we find ourselves in pain, emotional, physical, spiritual, our first instinct is often to make it stop. We look for quick fixes, immediate relief, fast answers. We ask, how long will this take? When will I be better? What can I do to move past this? We treat our pain like a problem to be solved rather than a teacher to be listened to. But healing is not a linear timeline. It is not a to-do list. It is not a project with a deadline or a mountain to be conquered. Healing is a sacred unfolding. It is the process of returning to yourself, layer by layer, breath by breath, in your own time, in your own way. And it can only happen when you allow space for it to occur, when you stop demanding that it be over and begin honoring exactly where you are. Think of a wound on the body. You can't make it close by yelling at it. You can't force it to scab faster. You can't control how your skin regenerates or how your cells rebuild. What you can do is tend to it, protect it, keep it clean, be patient with it. Trust that beneath the surface, life is doing what it knows how to do: repair, renew, restore. The same is true for your inner wounds. You cannot speed up the healing of your grief, your trauma, your heartbreak, or your self-doubt. You can only meet them with presence, with softness, with slowness. Slowness is not stagnation. It is depth. It is the willingness to feel fully, to listen deeply, to walk mindfully, and to be where you are instead of where you think you should be. This is why in Buddhism so much emphasis is placed on the breath, on mindful walking, on sitting still, because these are the practices that return you to your own pace. They teach you how to be in the moment without needing to escape it. They invite you to drop the storyline of "not there yet" and begin to find compassion for the now. And what happens when you stop rushing your life? You begin to hear yourself again. You notice the subtle sensations in your body. You feel the weight of your emotions, not to be overwhelmed by them, but to allow them to move. You begin to recognize the small signs of progress that rushing always caused you to miss. The moments when your body feels slightly more at ease. The times when your inner critic is a little less loud. The mornings when the sadness isn't as heavy. These are not accidents. They are evidence that healing is happening, not all at once, but in waves, in layers, in rhythms that only slowness can reveal. Rushing through life often comes from fear, the fear that if we slow down, we will fall behind, that if we pause, we will lose our value, that if we're not constantly becoming someone better, we are somehow failing. But this fear is based on a misunderstanding of life's purpose. You were not born to race. You were born to awaken. You were not created to prove yourself. You were created to know yourself. You are not here to constantly chase after the next version of you. You are here to come home to the truth of who you already are. And the only way to do this is to stop rushing long enough to feel what's actually here. There is an ancient Zen teaching that says, when you walk, just walk. When you sit, just sit. But whatever you do, don't wobble. This is a call to presence, to wholehearted participation in the moment, to moving with intention rather than with haste. Because in moving slowly, you move more truthfully. You begin to see clearly what your distractions were hiding. You begin to meet yourself in ways you never could when you were rushing past your own soul. You begin to realize that healing is not something you achieve. it is something you surrender to. It is not something you reach, it is something you remember. It is not somewhere you arrive, it is something you live. And when you live in this way, gently, mindfully, slowly, you begin to build trust. Trust in the process, trust in your body, trust in the timing of your life. Trust that even when things feel uncertain, something steady is holding you, something wise, something ancient, something within you. You begin to trust that you don't need to rush to be okay, that you don't need to be fixed to be loved, that you don't need to be at the end of your healing to begin living again. This is the gift of slowing down. It returns you to what matters. It reattunes your senses to beauty. It reconnects you to the sacredness of ordinary things, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the softness of your breath, the sound of your footsteps on the earth, the peace of a single moment fully lived. These are the things that heal you, not because they change your circumstances, but because they change your relationship with them. They remind you that life was never meant to be sprinted through. It was meant to be felt, experienced, embraced. So today, wherever you are in your journey, let this be your gentle reminder. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not late. You are in process. You are becoming. You are unfolding. And all of it, every pause, every tear, every small act of compassion, is part of the healing. Let yourself be where you are. Let yourself move at the pace of your own breath. Let yourself trust that you are being held, and in that trust, you will discover what no rush could ever offer: a deeper connection to life, a deeper connection to yourself, and the quiet joy of knowing that healing has been happening all along, quietly, slowly, faithfully, just beneath the surface of your rushing, always waiting for you to slow down enough to feel it. As you pause here, at the edge of all these lessons, with your heart softened by reflection and your mind calmed by stillness, know that you have not just read through words, but walked through a quiet path. A path that does not lead away from you, but gently, patiently, and lovingly returns you to yourself. And now, you are beginning to see what you may have forgotten somewhere along the way. The journey was never about becoming someone else, reaching somewhere else, or arriving at some future moment where everything is finally perfect. The journey was always inward. The arrival was always here. Each lesson, woven from the fabric of presence and the wisdom of the Dharma, has not given you something new to carry, but something old to release. The need to rush, the weight of perfection, the fear of change, the burden of silence, the pressure to be strong all the time. One by one, these illusions have been held up to the light, not with judgment, but with compassion. And in that light, something ancient and true has begun to awaken within you. You have remembered that you are not a machine built to perform, but a soul that is here to feel. You have remembered that your value does not increase when you suffer in silence, nor decrease when you ask for help. You have remembered that healing is not an achievement, but a homecoming, a returning to what was never broken, only buried beneath the noise. You have remembered that silence is not empty, that patience is not weakness, and that slowness is not failure. And most importantly, you have remembered that you are not alone, not in your pain, not in your healing, and not in your becoming. The teachings of Buddhism do not promise that life will be without pain, loss, or change. They do not offer escape. They offer something far more real. They offer a way to be fully alive within life as it is, to meet joy without clinging, to meet sorrow without collapsing, to meet uncertainty without panic, to meet yourself with all your contradictions, imperfections, and tenderness, and bow to your own becoming. You are not here to fix yourself. You are here to feel. You are here to see clearly. You are here to hold space for your own humanity, not to transcend it, but to live within it with grace. You are here to walk slowly, to breathe deeply, to listen inwardly, to offer your presence to the world as a quiet act of compassion. And if you ever forget this, if the noise of the world becomes too loud again, if the rush returns, if the fear tightens around your chest, just come back to your breath. Just return to stillness. Let the silence hold you. Let the moment meet you. Let the Dharma remind you. There is no need to rush. There is nothing to prove. There is only this breath, this step, this sacred now. And it is enough. You are enough. You always were. You always will be. And your path, wherever it leads next, will continue to unfold from the same place it began, not in some faraway future, but in the steady, patient, tender unfolding of your own heart. Welcome home.